Okay, so hello, welcome to therapyja.com. Each week we bring on different professionals in the mental health and physical health sector to speak about what they do and to tell us more about their job and their passion. The main purpose of Therapy JA and this interview segment is to kind of bring knowledge to, to humanize mental health and to make it not be such a mystery thing that's kind of shrouded in darkness and have a negative stigma. So the purpose of it is to just bring a positive stigma to mental health in the Caribbean and on the island of Jamaica. So today I have with me Dr. Fleur Minott Nembhard. She is an occupational therapist and also just a very good all-around person. Fleur, thank you for doing this today. How are you?
I am well, thanks. Let me correct you. I'm not a doctor. I am an occupational therapist. Yes.
Okay. It's just human nature, when you see someone in that profession, you say, yeah, man, he's a doctor.
Yeah.
That's part of the stigma. But okay, if you could just tell us about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am Fleur Minott Nembhard, and I am a registered occupational therapist. I trained at Florida International University, and I have been practicing for several years in various areas of the profession, but generally speaking, in adult physical dysfunction. That is the area of my specialty. And my subspecialty is hand therapy and upper limb rehabilitation, as well as industrial rehabilitation and neurological rehabilitation.
Okay, could you tell me about what is industrial rehabilitation? What does that mean?
Okay, so someone may have been, one aspect of it, somebody may have been injured on the job. They have had their physical therapy, and now they need to get back to work. Okay, so this may be whatever, could be an office worker, could be somebody who is like a stevedore or a truck driver or whatever it is. And having been off from work, they are unable to resume the demands, the physical demands that their job would require. Being able to sit, being able to lift, being able to stand for whatever periods, and so on and so forth. And so one aspect of industrial rehabilitation is work reconditioning and work hardening to simulate the types of tasks that this person will do on their job and work them back into being able to doing it. So we set up whatever the type of task is. So if it's somebody who is a supermarket, a person that stacks the shelves in the supermarket, for example. So you're talking about lifting weights. So you're going to have to lift a crate or a box or a case or something from the floor onto whatever the height is, or maybe overhead or whatever it is. So we set up the therapy session to simulate the types of tasks that they are going to be doing at work. And we do that, we increase the duration of the time that they're doing it. So an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, until, usually after 4 hours, we feel that this person can go back to work, maybe on a phased in basis, maybe, 3 days a week or whatever it is. And then they work their way back up to being able to do a full 40-hour week.
So I have to ask, what is it that kind of put you in, gave you this passion to do it? Was it something you always wanted to do? Like, how'd you end up in this?
Right. So actually, when I was going to go to school, I actually wanted to do physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was introduced to occupational therapy, and I thought, there's something about this that I really like this. It was the science, but also the art. And so I switched majors and I pursued occupational therapy, and the rest is history.
Okay. Oh, Wow. So wait, how long have you been doing it now?
I have been practicing for 34 years. So I've been doing this for a long time.
Wow. Wow. Is there anything like that you wish you knew about occupational therapy before you started?
Nothing. I believe I'm a believer. So I believe that I was called to do this. I don't believe that this was something that happened to come along. I believe that there was a reason for me to do this. And every day in my practice, I am sure, I am more and more sure that there is a reason for me to do this. I never feel that this is a profession that, you know, I'm getting burnt out. Never.
You've never felt burnt out.
Never. It's always dynamic. I mean, I work with so many different people, and there's so many different types of challenges with each one. It's always interesting. I never have a bad day because it's always interesting. And I can't have a bad day because as a therapist, you know that the people that you are working with, they are gaining some of their energy from you. So if you go in, then that's exactly how they are going to be. If you are upbeat, how are you doing today? And so on, let's try this, so on and so forth. You are encouraging them as well. We call it the therapeutic use of self. So how you approach them is also going to be therapeutic.
You feel like that applies not just in that, but in life in general?
I think so. I think so.
If someone has a good attitude and like people will pick up on it and follow?
Absolutely. And if they don't, well, you can't save the world. But if you but if you are confident about what you are doing, you are going to exude a confidence, and that is going to put people more at ease. They feel, okay, you know what you're talking about. Maybe there is some hope here. Maybe I can get some help here. And that is a good start, a good foundation for any kind of relationship, therapeutic or otherwise.
Okay. All right. So, like, what specific roles and responsibilities do occupational therapists have within the healthcare system of Jamaica?
Okay. So, let me first start out by saying that we do not have an occupational therapy training program, educational program in Jamaica at this time. So there are in Jamaica nine registered occupational therapists.
9 on the whole entire island?
That's it. Okay. And of the 9 of us, of course, you would imagine that we have 3 million people in Jamaica. It is estimated that of the 3 million people that we have, maybe 500,000 or so have a disability, whatever that may be, maybe an intellectual disability, a physical disability, whatever it is. So occupational therapy is a health and rehabilitation specialty. In other jurisdictions, you will find occupational therapists not only in hospitals and not only in therapy centers, but you will find occupational therapists in industry. You will find occupational therapists in schools. You will find occupational therapists in psychiatric facilities and so on. It's a very wide and deep profession. Our focus is, when we say the word occupational, people kind of think, okay, it has something to do with work. But occupational really is referring to the things that you do, okay? So you do your occupations. The first thing that you do is look after yourself. That's an occupation. Being able to get up, being able to take care of yourself, bathe yourself, dress yourself, prepare yourself a meal, whatever it is. That's one of the occupations that you have. You also would have an occupation of caring for your home. So you prepare meals, you launder, you clean, that sort of thing. You have occupations of productivity. You go to work, you do whatever it is. You have occupations in your social activities. You play whatever, you do whatever. You have occupations in your leisure activities. You have occupations in your health management activities. So an occupational therapist is looking at how all these occupational performance domains may be impacted or disrupted because of a disease or an injury. So we are looking at from the neonates right through to geriatrics and how these occupational performance domains are disrupted and what we can do, what training can we do, what strengthening can we do, what compensatory strategies can we teach for somebody to be able to resume with as much independence as possible their ability to perform these occupations. And then, of course, it's not only rehabilitation, but it is habilitation. And by that, I mean individuals who are born with a disability. It's not a matter that they had it and then they lost it. They need therapy to work on gaining the ability to feed themselves, to be able to dress themselves, to be able to write, etc., etc. So it's rehabilitation and habilitation that occupational therapists work in.
Okay.
So what I should say is because there are only 9 of us, there are very, very, very few areas that we are able to work in. In Jamaica, we do not have any registered occupational therapists in the public sector. Not at Sir John Bowling Rehabilitation Hospital, not at Bellevue, not at Bustamante Hospital for Children. None of the government sector hospitals have registered occupational therapists. At the University Hospital of the West Indies, there is one. There are 2 private pediatric centers that have occupational therapists. There is a private inpatient rehabilitation center that has an occupational therapist. And then the rest of us are in private practice. So when you talk about, how can we influence or what is it that we are doing in terms of the Jamaican health sector, our citizens sadly are very underserved by what we could do if there were more of us.
So why isn't there one in like the government, in these government hospitals? Is it that they can't afford them, or is it that
it's because they're not trained, they're not being educated in Jamaica. We do not have an educational program in Jamaica yet. So we are depending on whether it is expatriates or we're depending on Jamaicans who will come back to practice. And so most of them are, if not all of us, are in the private sector.
better pay? You don't have to say that, but
the salaries are not attractive. Salaries are not attractive. But the issue really is that we need an educational program, because everywhere, the salaries are more attractive in private practice in any country at all. So that's not specific to Jamaica. But what's happening with us is that we just do not have enough occupational therapists in Jamaica.
Yeah, I really didn't realize it was that bad because it's the same with speech therapists. I think someone was telling me it's like
Yes.
8 speech therapists on the island, and
Sure how many, but speech and language pathologists also have very few, a very low number of practitioners because again, there is not at this time, there is not a speech and language therapy pathologist program.
all right. So in the context of Jamaica, what are the misconceptions that you have dealt with when as an occupational therapist, where has someone not wanted to do it because them? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, I've never had anybody not wanting to do it. But what I have experienced is that people don't understand what it is because they are thinking that it has to do with work. And so, there is a misunderstanding of what it is. But once somebody knows and once they understand the scope of the practice, then everybody has said to me, okay, how come we didn't know about this before? How come we can't get this? You know, because once you understand what it is that we do, then you say, how can we not have occupational therapists?
Exactly. So I was reading up some interviews with some occupational therapists, and they were saying that a lot of times some people will get in the field of, oh, they want to make someone's life better, they're changing someone's life, but they're saying a lot of times for the patients, it's work, and the patients kind of sometimes find it very annoying to have to go and start over with these simple tasks. You know what I mean? So as much as you feel like you're making a difference, the patient them kind of annoyed for coming and do it. Have you had that experience or?
I wouldn't say annoyed, but I would say that many times, when for example, prior to whatever your injury was or your disease was. So let's say if you had a stroke, and prior to your stroke, you got up, you did what you wanted to do, you dressed yourself. Nobody had to teach you how to do that. You were performing all of these tasks independently. But in therapy, we have to start with the baby steps. We have to start with where you are right now. And if, for example, where you are right now, because of weakness, because of impaired mobility, because of impaired cognition, you are not able to perform your, let's use self-care tasks. Because believe it or not, even though it seems very simple to put on your shirt, for example, if you have lost the use of one side of your body, it's not easy to put on your shirt. And if in your condition, you also have cognitive deficits where your problem solving has been impacted, where your ability to even remember, to sequence things, to reason things out, if all of those types of skills have been affected, then the simple task of being able to put on your shirt is not that simple. And sometimes it's frustrating for them, yes. And how therapy works is repetition. We practice and practice and practice how to do this. We use certain strategies. So we're not, for example, we're not going to try and teach the whole sequence all at once. Maybe the first part of the sequence that we have to work on is just getting it over your hand or getting it up to your elbow or whatever it is. And then we do, and then. So we break it down as occupational therapists. We do activity analysis, and we are able to break down the task into its components so that we can work on each of those components and then gather them together for the final outcome, the final goal that we want to achieve. So yes, it can be frustrating. Yes, it can be frustrating. And of course, you would appreciate that somebody who has maybe suffered an injury, a hand injury, for example. I work a lot with hands, and they've suffered an injury, and now this hand cannot do the things that they used to do. This hand cannot, hold things. They have difficulty now performing their activities of daily living. And maybe they can't go back to work because this hand is not able to perform the types of tasks that they need on their job, or need in the kitchen, or need in whatever it is, whatever other area it is. And so, yes, they can become frustrated. But, as I said, our focus is, and we try and explain that these are the baby steps. And this is where we have to start. And this is what we do. And then over time, as they start to find that, okay, I couldn't do this before, but now I can do this aspect of it. You start to see they are now, more and more engaged. They see where this is going. And once they are practicing, because of course, therapy doesn't only happen in the therapy space, it has to happen at home. Right. That they see that they are getting better. Oh, I remember when I couldn't do this. Oh, remember when I couldn't do this? And they see that they themselves are seeing that they are improving. And so we find that we get more and more buy-in. And as we get more buy-in, the whole process goes smoothly. Now, we are not saying, as any type of rehabilitation specialist, that we are going to return somebody to normal. Okay. But what we are saying is that we are working with you to gain as much independence as possible. Depending on the situation, depending on the condition, the disease, the injury and so on, you may be able to return to normal, but that's not so in every case.
So why is it that you guys, because a lot of times, so it's not like gonna give false hope, right? Because like sometimes you'll be like, oh, sometimes it can be like, oh wow, you've been through this. Like I'm gonna give an example of someone that went through a stroke, where the doctors will be like, oh, you've been through this, but you're still able to get back up, but you won't say you'll return to normal. Why is that? Why is that you kind of you guard it in terms of not giving too much hope, but still giving some?
So if you look at each condition, okay, so a stroke, for example, what happens in a stroke is that there is a particular area of the brain where the cells have been deprived of oxygen, whether it was in a bleed or whether it was in a clot. And those cells that have been deprived of oxygen, that area is non-viable. Okay?
It can't, so that means it can't come back?
Right, that particular area. Okay? So what the therapy does is to stimulate other areas of the brain to take over some of those functions. So we cannot say to what extent we will be able to do that. And as I said, the therapy is not about returning to normal, but it is to gain as much independence as possible. So it means that you may be able to do something, but just not in the way that you did it before, but you can still do it.
Okay. Understood. You said something about earlier about neurological therapy and industrial therapy. Could you tell me about neurological therapy? How does that one work?
Okay, so in neurological rehabilitation, we are looking at conditions that have affected the brain, conditions that have affected the spinal cord. So in the brain, for example, and we gave the example before about a stroke, you can also have head injury. You can also have maybe, Parkinson's and so on. Whatever it is, that's affecting your brain. And your brain is control center. Your brain is what allows you to do whatever it is. So it's going to dictate the way you move. It's going to dictate the way you think, the way you are able to process information, the way you are able to do things. So if that has been disrupted, then the therapy is to work with you to be able to, as best as possible, overcome some of those challenges that you are having. So somebody, for example, who has had a spinal cord injury, okay, and this is a complete injury, and depending on the level that they have been affected, they may not be able to use their hands. Okay, so they may be able to use their arms, but anything below a certain level, they don't have that control. Okay, but that person can still be taught how to feed themselves, how to do various types of tasks using adaptive equipment and training them how to do whatever it is so that they can be as independent as possible. So, that's an example for a spinal cord injury. And we already gave the example of somebody who has survived a stroke.
Yeah. Are there like any initiatives or programs in Jamaica that helps the accessibility like of occupational therapy or enhances it? No?
When you say accessibility, what do you mean exactly?
Like for someone to be able to afford to do it. Because occupational therapy can be seen, and not for everyone, but it can be seen as a bit, is it pricey?
I don't know that it is. I don't know if I would say it is pricey. I think that the rates are set according to what it is that you are providing, you know. So in as I said, we don't have therapists in the government sector. And so in centers, maybe like in the University Hospital of the West Indies, I don't know what the rates are there.
Yeah.
But the issue is that there are just not enough occupational therapists. That's really what the issue is, that they're just not enough. If we have a steady stream of practitioners coming into the workforce and they were, placed in hospitals right across Jamaica, placed in schools right across Jamaica, placed in, and then private centers as well, just like anywhere else in the world, then access to occupational therapy would be much easier.
You've been doing this for like over 30 years, right? Why is it that it's so small? Like why do so many doctors go and practice and just don't want to come back? Okay.
Why? Well, I don't know. We don't have any data in terms of how many Jamaicans go and study occupational therapy. We wouldn't know that. Those of us, the last person that the government trained in Jamaica came back over 40 years ago. The government has not sent any other Jamaican for training in over 40 years.
That's wild. Like, why haven't they? Is it what price? It can't be price. Government can afford.
We'd have to ask. We'd both have to ask Dr. Tufton that.
Oh, 40 years. That's wow.
Well, over 40 years. So if we are not training, if we are not educating locally, and we are not sending Jamaicans overseas to train to come back, then we're going to be in the situation that we find ourselves in now.
Yeah. Wow. I'm kind of surprised about that. Are there ways where you as an occupational therapist would collaborate with other healthcare professionals?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, for example, occupational therapy is one of the rehabilitation specialties. We work alongside the speech and language pathologists, and we work alongside the physical therapists. And in many jurisdictions, those therapists work together. And we find many times that we do better, that the patient does better, the client does better when there is collaboration between the therapists. Okay. But it then means that you have to have all three of those therapies in the same space, in the same therapy space. And therein lies the challenge.
The problem, because
Right.
office them not big.
Right. Well, and just, they're just too few of us. They're just too few of us. So, when I work in a center where there is a speech and language pathologist, frequently we work together. There are in rehabilitation, there are many areas of overlap. So it's not that you start here and I start there. There are going to be areas of overlap. But we complement each other. What we do complements each other.
So you've been doing this for 30 years. Has there been any advancements that you have seen in the industry?
In advancements in occupational therapy?
Yes, as well as healthcare.
I can speak to occupational therapy. So, there is research, there's research that is guiding our practice via the evidence. Okay. So based on evidence, we know that, okay, this works this way, this doesn't work this way, and so on. So definitely that is guiding our practice. Also, there is technology now that we can be using in terms of, cognitive rehab, in terms of, even physical rehab. For example, the prostheses that are available now for somebody who has lost fingers, for example, I work in hands. For somebody who has lost fingers, there are prostheses available now that would allow them to do a lot more tasks than they could have done 20 years ago. So definitely there are advancements, that have impacted occupational therapy.
All right. What about the people who are marginalized? Because as I said, I remember this happened, right? I was walking to lunch. It was like near one of the call centers and this guy came. Like he was walking into the call center, he worked there, and he was like young youth, younger than me, using a walker, barely able to walk. And I was like, this guy needs to be in physio and occupational therapy. And I was like, yo, what going on, man? Because it look away, and him say, yo, him did. Basically, there was like a war in him community. He caught a stray bullet. You know what I mean? And he was just like, boy, someone said, so you do your therapy? Man said, brother, I think it was like 9,000 a session. And he was like, him just can't afford that. So him just like use the walker and thing. And I was just like, man. Like, have you ever had a situation where somebody just not able to afford but does need the help? Like, what about situations as that?
Yeah, so I think we all have clients that maybe refer to us. Usually, you have the Surgeon Golding Hospital, Rehabilitation Hospital. And even though I know that they have a very long waiting list for persons to come in, but they accept patients from all over Jamaica. Okay. That center does there for rehabilitation. However, again, it's one center, and it's one center that does not offer occupational therapy. So again, we should probably have one rehabilitation hospital that is operated by the government in every county or in each parish, and be able to staff it, with all the professionals that we need. But that probably is, that's what should happen. Whether that will happen, I don't know. And so, yes, there are people who would benefit from the service who cannot access it because, yes, they can't afford it, or cannot access it because they can't get there.
It's like nothing. It's like they're from country and it's only one in town or something like that, or.
So that could be it. But I mean, I think there are two occupational therapists, I think, in the West. We talk about occupational therapy now. I'm not referring to physical therapy or speech and language pathology.
Yeah.
So if you are I have a gentleman, for example, that comes to me each week from Ocho Rios.
Once a week type of thing, just
Comes in once a week from Ocho Rios for occupational therapy. Yes. And that is because it's not available in St. Anne. It's just, it's just not available. So he has the wherewithal, somebody to bring him for therapy. His wife brings him, she waits for him, and she takes him home, But how many people have that ability? So,
by the way,
really need to have more practitioners. That's the bottom line. So that there are centers available across Jamaica to service the needs of our citizens.
and so you think if there was a course at like UWI or one, you think it would increase the amount of people that would do occupational therapy out there?
Definitely, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Okay. By the way, so I think the stereotype, especially for occupational and physio, is that it's for old people. But you probably it's a stereotype, but do you get a lot of young people and things that come in?
Of course. I mean, as I had said to you initially, that occupational therapists work with even the newborns. There are occupational therapists, not in Jamaica, but there are occupational therapists that work with the neonates. From the premature babies, the babies who, may be showing certain delays and so on. And they are working with them from there. And they're working in the school system. Occupational therapists work with children who have autism, children who have Down syndrome, children who have cerebral palsy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right through to the adult, the geriatric person, yes. So as I said, the what we are looking at is your performance in your occupational domains. And those are going to be your self-care, your productivity. So productivity for a child is their ability to be able to play. And so you will have occupational therapists that are working with children. So they're not going to be doing exercise with them and so on. And they're not going to be doing, depending on the level that they're at, the same type of therapy that an adult will be getting. But the objective to have them be able to meet their developmental milestones and be able to be more and more and more independent is as it is for the adults. That's what we are trying to achieve.
All right, so like I always try to ask this question: how does occupational therapy attribute to the overall mental health of like clients? Because sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, because like as I said, like a lot of times, like I'm always kind of curious about that, like the overall mental health. How does occupational therapy kind of help? Let's say like exercise and gym will help someone to kind of be overall in a more positive mood. How does occupational therapy contribute to the overall well-being and the quality of life for people?
Okay, so you're talking about people who have mental health challenges, and you do have occupational therapists. That is another area. So I myself practice in adult physical dysfunction, but you do have occupational therapists that work in psychiatry. And there was a time where there were, I think, maybe 3 or 4 occupational therapists that were working at Bellevue. Okay. We don't have that anymore. So, yes, occupational therapists work in mental health. They would be looking again at what is disrupting this person from being able to be as independent as possible in all the tasks that they need to be doing. Or how is this person able to, what is their self-esteem? What is their self-esteem? What is their self-awareness? Are the challenges that they have preventing them from being able to concentrate, preventing them from being able to attend to tasks, preventing them from being able to manage their time. Those are going to be areas that the occupational therapist who is working in mental health are going to be looking at. So they have occupational therapists that are working with the homeless. They have occupational therapists that are working with people who are abusing substances. They have occupational therapists with people who may have schizophrenia or whatever it is. So again, the occupational therapist is a part of the team, or should be a part of the team that is working with this person for them to be as independent as possible.
Okay. Have you had speaking of patients, have you had a situation where someone came in and over the period of time of working with them, you made they've come back and thank you that you've changed their life, you've made their life better?
Oh yes, all the time. And as I said, it may not necessarily be in doing the things that the way they were able to do. But all the times, even, when as therapy is progressing, not necessarily that they have to come back, but they will say to me, now I can hold the steering wheel. I can drive again because now I can hold my steering wheel. I can write again. Now I can put on my brassiere. Now I can, and you can hear on a regular basis. And I too am asking, what are you having? What are you still having a challenge with? Okay, let's work on this. Okay, you are having a challenge with being able to do blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see how we're going to address this. Let's break down the parts. Let's see maybe what devices are available to assist you to do this, and so on and so forth. That happens all the time. All the time.
And so that independence, because even with my family member, because he wants to drive again, that is his thing. You'd be surprised how many people value that freedom of being able to just go in at a car and drive.
It's the independence. But there is a lot of skills that are involved in being able to drive. Okay. It's not just holding the steering wheel. There are a lot of physical skills, and there are a lot of cognitive, by which I mean thinking skills that must be in place for somebody to be able to operate a motor vehicle.
I told you the story so one time in the thief out the car. We were all like, what? Because I thief out the car, drove it to a therapy. I don't remember where it was. Drove it to one of the places I was staying at, and then came back home. This is last year? This is last year. Yeah, this is last year.
I think now that you say it, yes, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, it happens. But
I don't know.
Fortunately, a disaster did not occur, but it could have.
Listen, man, I think it was on a Sunday, so barely any cars were on the road. But the whole of us were just like, what? Listen, I have to be honest, a brain injury, I am petrified. I'm scared. Seeing it up close and personal, I'm afraid. I change my diet, I not drink nothing with any too much sugar. Like I don't eat too much fried foods anymore. No man, is like seriously because you see you see how it affect them cognitive skills, and you see a person change. Like you see the personality change, and you're like, nah, make this happen to me.
I do want to say though that even though for some people, being able to operate a motor vehicle is not possible because of the extent of the injury that they have acquired. But there are some people who are able. So we do not say, for example, that everybody that has a stroke will not be able to drive again, because we have many stroke survivors who have returned to driving. Okay, because they even though they may not have the same function that they did, but the function that they do have, the physical function that they do have, is adequate or more than adequate for them to operate a vehicle. But more importantly, their cognitive skills, their thinking skills, have not been impaired, so that they can use those skills to be able also to operate a motor vehicle.
What advice? Forgot to ask you this. What advice would you give to aspiring occupational therapists who want to consider a career in this field?
Oh boy, come on. Come. We need as many occupational therapists as possible. So, we've been talking about the fact that we do not have at this point an educational program. But as an association, the Occupational Therapy Association of Jamaica, we are working with an institution to try and change that. And so we hope that in the not too distant future, that this will be possible for our local citizens who have this. Of course, there will be people who are able to go overseas, and they may be thinking, well, okay, maybe they didn't even know that occupational therapy existed in Jamaica when they were thinking of going. And so, our association welcomes everybody with open arms. We have expatriates who want to come and work in Jamaica, and we are happy to get everybody on board because the need is great. So anybody that has an interest, there actually is right now there is an educational program in Trinidad at the University of the Southern Caribbean. That might not be possible for everyone, but certainly we are hoping that in the not too distant future that it will be available in Jamaica.
Okay, I feel like you'd be a great mentor for people because you just have your knowledge and your understanding of it. You haven't gotten anybody that wants to get in that you've been able to kind of push to go abroad?
Yes, I have 3 cousins right now.
Yeah, man. No, man. You're very passionate about it.
I'm very passionate about it. And the funny thing is, for both of them did not know about occupational therapy. I said to them, come and spend some days with me and see what occupational therapy is. And they were hooked. And so this is something that they want to do themselves, and they are making their way to be able to do this. So yes, there are people, and I'm not the only one, because there are others of us in other areas, and we come across people all the time who want to be occupational therapists. Yes.
By the way, what inspired the move? If you don't mind me asking.
From the other location.
Yeah.
I was there for so many years, but Sarah took over that campus, and Sarah is moving departments of nephrology and oncology from KPH there. And so they needed more spaces. So all of us who were tenants were given notice to leave. So, all of us have had to leave. And so,
Revamp is still there though?
Revamp is still there, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that is it. Fleur, thank you so much. This was very good. I'm like, you shone a light on it and you made it, you explained it very well as to what occupational therapy is. Are you on Instagram? You have social media, right?
Yes, the otclinicja.com. And I have a website, the otclinicja.com. So people can find me there. This is not an advertisement, but it may be a space if you have someone who you are wondering if occupational therapy could be one of the vehicles to improve their independence. This is somewhere that you can go to see what it is that is offered.
Okay. You have an Instagram though, or just the website?
Yes, no. The Instagram is the same name.
The OT.
OT Clinic JA.
Okay. Just making sure, and a TikTok as well. So once again, thank you so much, Fleur, for doing this. This was very educational. I appreciate you for doing this. Stay tuned next week for our next episode of therapyja.com. If you have any other questions, always log on to therapyja.com and you can ask questions, and also log on to the otclinic.com if you have any questions for Fleur. And yeah, so thanks very much, guys.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.